MNCAA episode number 108. And yes, we are partying like it's 1999 here with the Big Ten crew. Nate Wells, Drew Cove. Why? Prince, yes, born and raised here in the great state of Minnesota. And Nate, when we talked pre-show, as we are embarking on the selection committee Sunday here, NCAA tournament field has been set. And unfortunately for us here on MNCAA, only one of our 6 schools was able to make its way into the tournament, and it is no other than the Golden Gophers, where, Nate, the last time I checked, the Gophers have had a pretty good track record when the Frozen Four has been in the great state of Minnesota.
Well, I mean, just Minnesota schools in general. Gophers won it 0-2 at the X. Duluth won it the last 2 times it was at the X. Minnesota did not have a great one in 1989, but, you know, we're not partying like that, so we're just going to enjoy the Big Ten having 4 teams in the dance and still having a Minnesota school to talk about.
So let's kind of go back to how we got here, right, guys? Drew, Minnesota just a week and change ago, unfortunately, wasn't able to get over the hump that is the University of Michigan in the semifinal. But then something strange happened. Michigan State winning the Big Ten regular season also did something that they haven't done since the inception of the Big Ten. They just took home the Big Ten championship tournament as well. So the Spartans on a bit of a roll here headed into the NCAA tournament as well.
Yeah. It turned into a big, also off the bump, Prince was from Minnesota. You'd never know. Never heard that before once in my life. But I digress. I say that every time Prince plays. I'm like, Prince is from Minnesota. What? Crazy. But yeah, so obviously talking about Michigan, the state of
everyone
Michigan.
in Minnesota has their own Prince story.
I feel like they do. I'm too young to have one, but I've heard plenty of stories of people who do. So, and he is quite an eclectic guy from what all the accounts that I heard that were more or less firsthand, I think. So, but yeah, to the state of Michigan, the other big M hockey state, Michigan State pulling through in overtime at their home rink against Michigan. Obviously, Michigan not so much playing for their lives at that point, but they still want to beat their in-state rival for the tournament championship. But obviously, it did not come to be, and Michigan State prevails all the way to be a number 1 seed, not overall, but a number 1 seed, one of the 4 best teams in college hockey all year to kind of get to wear their white jerseys throughout the entire regional round. So we'll see, and that kind of leads us into Minnesota's regional, because we thought that Minnesota, in a lot of let's say, I guess, Max Veach likes to embark in these a lot, to kind of some projections on where the bracket's going to go. A lot of people thought Michigan State would be in not the Omaha regional, but the Omaha hosted regional. But it's an almost all Michigan plus North Dakota regional in the other round. So Minnesota does get to evade the Michigan State in the first round, but they will have to play a very familiar former WCHA opponent in the first round.
And before we get to that, guys, how about this, right? So last year up in Fargo, 3 Minnesota schools, and everybody here in this state was up in arms about that. How about this, though? Seemingly a repeat, 3 Michigan schools in the same bracket. I want to go to our bracket integrologist. We're going to call it that way, Mr. Nate Wells. Nate, there was some challenges this year with the bracket, right? For lack of a better, St. Cloud State losing out almost made it a little bit easier, but it still feels like no matter how they would have drawn this particular bracket up, I feel like there's going to be folks on either one of the coasts that are not going to be particularly happy with some of the draws that came out of it.
The 2 big issues, and I'll preface this by saying it could have been a lot worse because Providence just missed out. St. Cloud just missed out. Omaha was in and North Dakota was in, but they're in spots where you have to switch one of them anyways. So you're not having a North Dakota fan base that could easily fill Sioux Falls because they can't go to Omaha. They can't go to Sioux Falls when Omaha's the host. But the big issues are UMass getting in as the final, a large bid. They're the host in Springfield. So on that end, where you have the top 2 seeds are both Hockey East schools, are both teams that would like to be close to home and earn that right. It sends BU somewhere elsewhere out west on a flight. And in that way, you're trying to figure out, hey, do we do bracket integrity? Does it matter where we put BU? Do we make them closer to home? And in this case, the committee just decided a flight's a flight. Let's stick a little bit with bracket integrity. The only thing that we're really mixing around is you have the 2-7, so that works well with Minnesota being there and being able to bring their fan base. You have to flip 10 and 11 because those are two interconference matchups. If you just did straight 116, 215, et cetera, down the line, you end up with Minnesota playing Michigan, which we just saw that. And then you'd have North Dakota playing Omaha. And while you can technically do that, the community always tries to avoid they try to avoid interconference matchups unless you're kind of forces your hand and you have 5-6 teams in. And that's not the case this year. The big issue, and I'll throw this one out to you guys, and Nick, you could probably throw this out to everybody throughout this week's podcast, is because of the fact that UMass is hosting as a 4 seed and they have to be in there. Denver is now there because UMass can't play BU, they can't play BC, and they decided that to still keep bracket integrity with having Michigan having the 3 versus the 14 rather than having the lowest 1 seed. Michigan State going out east, which again they could have done as well and just mix it around. But the reason that UMass is in the tournament is because Denver won. If Denver lost, CC would be in the tournament and we would not have this issue. So I just want to throw this out to you guys. Would you rather, if you win, you set yourself up for playing essentially 2 road games, but if you lose, your biggest rival gets into the NCAA tournament? Like what kind of choice is that? Like how bad is that? Which one would you guys take?
And maybe I have a different take on this, guys, but I think from the fans' perspective, right? Because for the committee, right, they're trying to juggle both, the integrity of the bracket, but also because the way that the system is set up, not because of any lack of foresight or the NCAA just having to seem like they know everything. I'm totally kidding. They don't. But when you're not at home sites, right? And at the end of the day, if I'm a team, I don't really care if I'm a player where I go. And why do I care about my biggest rival? Here's my thing. At the end of the day, you have to go out, you have to win 2 hockey games to get back to St. Paul. So the way that I look at it, at least from the player's perspective, is, we punched our ticket. Wherever we go. And at the end of it, whatever happens. So I'm not sure that the teams, the coaches, the players are that invested into it. I get the fan base argument, but I'm not sure the players and coaches are thinking it the same way. Drew, I'm curious to see if you have a different take on it than I do.
Yeah, I don't know. As a fan base, I would want to try and I wouldn't want to lose a game, but I'd also want the chance to beat my biggest rival on a big stage. But also, yeah, from a player's perspective, I wonder if they even really think about, all right, I'm going, if they are flying somewhere, which Denver typically is, somewhere, I mean, unless that's a really long bus ride, even to the westernmost regional. But I think to them, yeah, again, a plane ride is a plane ride. And whether it's in Massachusetts in some small AHL barn or some 2,500 seat arena in the suburbs of St. Louis, who knows? I don't know if they think too much about it, but obviously, as a lot of people, a lot of hockey people would like to say, is that he never played the game. So I wouldn't know, but that's a little tongue in cheek. But just every sport has that. It's like there's a certain sect of people that say, "Oh, he never played the game. He doesn't have any clue." So I have no idea what's going through those players' heads in terms of which one they choose because, again, never played the game.
It's funny because a lot of those comments do come from people who also didn't play the game, but I digress.
Right.
So, Nate, though, at the end of it, I think one of the other things that we saw with the bracket was essentially the Missouri bracket, right? You have a lot of fan bases that at least historically have traveled pretty well. And this is going to be the smallest building in the regionals. 2,500 is the capacity. So even Mullet Arena somehow beats that. So the Coyotes can one up on that. So there's something. But, to your point, right, this has been a discussion point throughout the season when Brad Schlossman brought this up. Does this, again, add to the argument that the teams should be hosting these regional games on campus sites, because I mean, 2,500, and I think you had mentioned in a tweet too just before our recording that, you know, part of it is that some of these venues out on the west side of the bracket aren't really bidding to host these events either.
That's exactly it. No one out west is really bidding, and you can't really blame them. Green Bay stopped bidding because there's a stretch where Wisconsin was getting into the tournament. No one in Michigan's bid in over a decade, and that's going to continue. It's going to be about 15 years at the very least. Ohio's finally getting back in next year. So we're talking about Minnesota hasn't bid since 2016. So we're talking about the three biggest areas where you're surrounding yourself with college hockey, and all these buildings are on the outskirts. Thankfully, Denver finally got back in bidding a few years ago, because even that would have been made it worse. But essentially, with this bid, it's because for this year there were two bids that were neutral sites outside west of Allentown, and it's Sioux Falls and Maryland Heights, Missouri. I'm actually really curious. I'm really curious to see how that Missouri one ends up being, because I know you have. It's either going to be an insane sellout and people are going to be really tough to get tickets because it's so small, or it's just going to shine and show that if you put some in the middle of nowhere, no one's traveling, even these big fan bases that will travel and have a lot of people around there. So we're going to see one way or another. At the very least, that's going to bring a conversation. The fact that UMass is hosting as a 4 seed is going to bring conversation. You can probably even throw Omaha hosting as a 3 seed into that.
It's interesting, right? And Drew, to kind of even go further with this, we touched on this way back, I believe, in September, October, and that is, you know, there were reports that a Frozen Four bid was likely coming from not only somebody very out west, but on the very west coast. We're talking the Seattle Kraken and Plymouth Clutch Arena have apparently expressed a big ton of interest in hosting a Frozen Four. So here's my guess, like, what's it going to take, right? You know, what's it going to take for the committees out there that look at not only the fan engagement, since apparently when we talk about brackets and how we build them, right? You know, there's the argument of the players and the coaches' perspective. We talk about the fans' perspective. Well, again, you know, the building size apparently is a problem. To where these folks are traveling to is a problem. You eliminate that with going to campus sites. 3, I don't know if you guys saw, but the Sanford Center was rocking holy heck during the CCHA championship game against Michigan Tech. You know, so you put it all together, Drew, and everything is pointing towards going back to campus sites. And I don't know, maybe there's so much of like evidence there that says this should and could be better. And I don't know, would it be even easier just to draft the bracket that way too, where it's like, well, everybody knows where we're going. So I don't know, like, what do you take from all this?
Yeah, it just seems like if fans know where they're going to go or know where they need to go, and it's closer than half a country away on a week's notice, it's just kind of all the same points. It's like, I think for Frozen Four, it's different just because if you make it a destination, it's a decent airport hub, and you have the benefit of time. You have a couple weeks to say, all right, boom, those fans are going to show up. Seattle seems like a good place. I've never been there, but I'm sure it's a great place, just like Tampa. It's like, I think the Gophers technically hosted the Frozen Four in Tampa. So it's like, or
wasn't it
Nate, you know better than me. I don't know what I saw on there.
It was Wisconsin technically hosted the last two.
Yeah.
I mean, and then even next year is in St. Louis, the Frozen Four.
Yeah.
And Vermont is the host of that, even though Lindenwood now is a school there. And then I think North Dakota hosts in 2 years in Vegas.
Vegas, yep, correct.
So you can host. The thing is, you can host anywhere as long as you put up the people and the infrastructure, and that's perfectly fine. And it really works well for the Frozen Four. The issue is we're hosting all these regionals in the secondary third ring cities where you have AHL buildings, USHL buildings, and they're extremely tough to get to on 3-4 days notice. And especially even for the diehards, you have to make that commitment. And if you're going to make a commitment between the Frozen Four and a regional, Frozen Four is going to win out every time.
100%, guys. So with that being said, let's look at the actual bracket with the Frozen Four. For those that are listening and not watching us on YouTube, we'll do our best here. So in one of the brackets, so the Boston College Eagles, the number 1 overall seed, they'll take on Michigan Tech. Wisconsin and Quinnipiac is the other matchup in that bracket. And then it's Denver, Massachusetts, Maine, and Cornell. And then we have, again, the 3 Michigan schools, North Dakota and Michigan. That will be quite the matchup. I don't think that's going to be a 9-0, 8-1 finish like we saw quite a bit last year, guys. Michigan State and Western Michigan, that also is a very intriguing matchup out there in that. And then for the Gophers, they will be with Omaha and then Boston University and RIT. So Minnesota doesn't have the easiest pathway to get back to St. Paul. And I want to start there, guys. This Omaha Maverick squad taking down North Dakota. In fact, they've given them fits over the past couple of years. They, I believe, won the regular season matchup and then had a really impressive showing in the semifinal this past Friday. This is a team that's got a little bit of everything. They've got a little bit of physicality. They've got some scoring touch. They get some good goaltending. Drew, I want to start with you on this. When you saw the matchup come through, what were your initial thoughts?
I thought that the Gophers are going to have to be really, really disciplined in their breakout game because I was at the NCHC semifinal games and watched Omaha just dismantle North Dakota in the neutral zone, which was, I mean, it wasn't just like a couple of key plays. It was like routinely just all over, like 60 minutes. They put in an incredible effort to thwart any offensive. Most offensive breakouts. And they really took advantage. They turned a lot into like 2-on-1s. They turned it into like really high danger chances. And obviously scored a billion goals against North Dakota to move on. But I think Omaha's going to be a very, very tricky test for the Gophers. I think for a number 3 seed, they're extremely tested because obviously there are like a lot of like lower seeds that, I mean, 4 seeds that are kind of champions of conferences that aren't as tough. But I mean, playing in the NCHC is making it to the championship game, obviously not pulling through. But I think that's obviously a very tough, much tougher conference than a lot to thrive in. So I think Omaha has the battle tested nature of their team. They can obviously score. They played very well defensively, very well physically. And yeah, just watching them beat up on North Dakota and kind of seeing all the speculation that Minnesota would draw Omaha in the first round, even beyond this past week and Selection Sunday. But if you're a Gopher fan, don't overlook Omaha one bit. This is going to be a very tough game for the Gophers. And I hate to be kind of doom and gloom guy, but this is going to be a really tough test. Regardless, I mean, if they get out of this game, it's going to be an even tougher test against BU. So, and obviously we saw them last year, and I think they're obviously only better than they were last year. So, very, very tough regional. You could make an argument that it's one of the toughest, especially just from experience this season, experience last season. But it's going to be to get to the Frozen Four. The Gophers are going to have to play extremely well for 2 games.
And Nate, to echo Drew's sentiment there, right? Omaha is, shall we say, doesn't have maybe the national sort of recognition for how good they are. Back on our show, or different show, the Huskies Warming House podcast, me and Noah Grant, we went through the preseason and we had slotted Omaha to be in a top 4 spot, maybe around the 5 for the regular season finish. We just saw the dominoes build. Now, they didn't quite get things going until late, but my goodness, they're on a heater right now. And again, what a first round series against Colorado College. And then again, knocking off North Dakota in the semifinal there in St. Paul before dropping to number 3 overall Denver. Again, to Drew's point, they are battle tested regardless of, where, shall we say, the casual fan maybe doesn't maybe see them quite as bitch or shall we say, doesn't always see them as a big threat. But Nate, for the Gophers, Drew said, talk about breakouts, but what about just, being, as Herb Brooks would say, you got to take a hit to make a play. I think there's going to be a lot of physicality in this game. Omaha plays a lot on their toes. They finish checks, and that's going to be something that this Gopher defense, which has struggled with teams that put a lot of pressure on them early. What do you see in this matchup also that could, shall we say, give the Gophers fits?
Yeah, these are some really good teams in the regional, and you knew it was going to be the case when you figured Minnesota was going to finish somewhere between 7 and 10, where the top team is going to be 1 or 2, and you're going to face a team that's very even to you in the first round. Yeah, like both of you mentioned, Omaha has been one of the hottest teams in the second half, and it's really flown under the radar just because Colorado College is kind of been able to get that noise from the NCHC. They don't have the consistency of a Western Michigan throughout there. St. Cloud State's kind of been up and down. That kind of steals that a little bit there, where you're like, are they going to make the tournament? Are they not? So, yeah, if they believe they've lost 2-3 games since the middle of January. If you include the throw the one in against Denver, they've owned North Dakota, and just, they're able to force teams to play these very low scoring physical games. And we've seen Minnesota do that and find a little bit more success. It feels like they're seeing a little bit more of this one's going to be a little bit more of the Wisconsin, Michigan State, Notre Dame style that the Gophers have had various forms of success against this season. I'm curious to see. For me, the big factor is going to be Minnesota team does not. In fact, the last time that the Mavericks were in the NCAA tournament, they also played Minnesota in 2021. So I'm really curious still to see if Minnesota's experience kind of shines through. They know how to take those punches and make plays and be able to battle when they're going down. And if they're able to find that success, be able to turn around in 2 days and face a team with a completely different style, whether that's RIT pulling off the upset of the year, or whether it's BU, who is only built and gotten stronger, being the team that Minnesota played a really good game against in the Frozen Four semis last year.
Nate, you mentioned obviously not losing a whole lot of games in the second half. I mean, the Gophers too are quietly in the camp of, I think they lost 4 games in regulation since the new year, and I think one of those was to a Colorado College team that a lot of people still were underrating at the time. And obviously just some conference rivals, but they put together a lot of series of good games. I think they only let in 3 goals or more 4 times in their last 16 or 17 games, if I did my math right earlier. But I think obviously we're kind of just warning people how good and how hot Omaha is right now. But I do think the Gophers are right there with them in terms of playing well at the right time, getting scoring from just about everywhere, and the unexpected places, and also being very shut down defensively. And the defense has come such a long way since the start of the year when we were talking. We've kind of escalated. We've gone through that roller coaster throughout the season, but not to underestimate the Gophers or to throw them to kind of dismiss them in this conversation of the matchup itself. But I do, from a results standpoint, Minnesota and Omaha are very, very similar in the second half of the season.
Yeah, and honestly, I'd probably favor Minnesota in this matchup. Like, as much as I do speak highly of Omaha, and I do think they're a very well coached team, and that things are going well for them. But yeah, I would favor Minnesota in this matchup. They are very comfortable in playing those low scoring games. They do have the ability to turn it on and get into that second, third gear. The thing that I was impressed about with Omaha is just their ability to kind of respond when things were going wrong, especially in that North Dakota semifinal. But we've seen that so much with Minnesota, where especially during the second half of the season, that they're able to limit mistakes. Honestly, at this point, we point out their mistakes more often because of just how rare they are. If you don't see those, they score, they get a goal in the next shift, or you see, with very few exceptions, something goes down to 2-3, and things start to spiral in a bit. But I guess for me, the big thing with Minnesota is going to be, even I do favor them, as I think I've said 3 times now, if I haven't said there. But I want to see whether that the Michigan game and having this week off, whether having kind of maybe a little bit of not the best series against Penn State, whether those are kind of wake-up calls when it comes to single elimination. Because if you're off, if you're not winning those little battles, if you're slightly off and just have that off night, you're not you're done. You don't get a second chance. It's one game, 60 minutes overtime. That's all she wrote.
Yeah, guys, and I'm not gonna put myself on the bus that I'm not favoring the Gophers here, but I will throw caution at the wind that if and honestly, I know the sparks are going to come, and that's fine. I'll be the one that's on the statue taking rocks. I don't care. But at the end of it, I think where Minnesota is going to have to win this game is a couple of areas. One, they have to simplify their breakout. I really think that it's going to be very, very difficult. Watch what North Dakota tried to do in the semifinal, Drew. They're a team that loves to play with possession, carry the pucks in on the rush. Omaha takes that away all day, and they're very comfortable playing that up-tempo style defensively, and they get to them. They get to people. They get to pucks, so you have to be okay with the dump and chase. You just have to, because if you start turning the pucks over at the blue lines, you're going to end up paying for it at the back of your net. The other option to me is Omaha goes to the front of the net. They go and they crash. They love the grease pan type goals. And so the Gophers defense, they're going to have to play a different sort of game where they're going to have some FU to their game. They're going to have to clear out space in front of Justin Close, and they're going to really have to be able to tie up sticks and get to those loose pucks first. That's where Omaha really preys on their opposition, is in the dirty areas in front of the opposing net. But I think the Gophers can do it. The question is, can they do it for 60 minutes? I don't know if they faced a team as gritty as the Omaha Mavericks this year. But with that being said, because I don't want to bear myself too much here, guys, say that they do get through Omaha, which will be a very tough game. They don't get a better matchup. Likely BU will take care of business against RIT. That would be one of the bigger stunners since St. Cloud AIC. Yeah, I said that sheepishly. It's fine. But
no. You got to mention the other one. They're in Sioux Falls this time. I mean, I was there. It was right? St. Cloud Air Force. Billy the Greek pulling his thing there.
Yeah, about that. So,
yeah.
Nate, but with that being said, since we were definitely pounding on the host here tonight, which is totally fine. At the end of the day, Macklin Celebrini, he's good. And BU is a very good hockey team. So honestly, though, if the Gophers can find a way to get past these two squads, I would imagine they got to feel pretty darn good about themselves, and they would be going into St. Paul in the Frozen Four, and a pretty high note, I would think, right, Nate?
They would be extremely happy. Look, you play in front of you. You're playing 5 miles away from where your bed is. You're extremely happy.
Back to campus night.
Back to campus essentially. You're gonna have a lot of crowd with you in Sioux Falls. That will certainly help. And I mean, I really like that arena. I was down there in 2018. I enjoyed the city. They have this, like, the arena is really nice. It's 10,000 seats arena. It's connected to the old arena, so it's really interesting when I had to go in through there. It was like we started through the old arena, kind of walked back through the back way to get to the new one. It's just really kind of weird like that, but I thought it was nice. So it should be a good crowd. Yeah, you get BU, a team where you have a lot of players who know what it takes to get to a Frozen Four. You bring in Macklin Celebrini, who 30 goals, likely number one pick in June, shows why he is why he is that talented. So you're getting a little bit more of that high end talent that you're facing. I'm not even talking about like Quinn Hudson, the other Jack Hughes. I'm trying to think, Lane Hudson, Alex Tuck's brother, what's his name, Luke. So we can just keep going on that. They got quite a few guys that they have the talent. But there's a reason they're one of the top 2-3 teams in the nation there. And you're going to play different teams like that, where I think, for me personally, I think they're one of the most well-rounded schools that are in this tournament. So it's going to be a very tough matchup. But then you have the Gophers, who they have some experience. They have multiple ways to win. They can play various styles. We've talked at length the last few weeks about their depth and having players step up at the right time. I was kind of thinking, honestly, back, because it's the 10-year anniversary of the 0.6 goal, how Minnesota, Justin Hall, the year before, he was basically their 8th defenseman. They put him on as a forward to have him to play in special team situations. He hadn't scored a goal all year. The players were joking on the bench, are like, we need to get a goal from Halsey. We need to get a goal from Jake Parento. Like, you're very defensive defenseman there, and they get it happening. Like, you need people like that to step up and play a role. Kind of like Middlestat did actually against BU, to tie everything here together. So
we're calling it here, Carl Fish goal.
Oh, is it Carl Fish goal in Sioux Falls, or is it in St. Paul? Because, I mean, those roofs going to blow off either way. But
if it's in St. Paul, you might not see me the next week. That would be crazy. I'd be losing my mind for a week straight.
Does parade start on the east side, or does it end on the east side?
It starts and ends on the east side. It doesn't touch campus. No, it doesn't. If Carl Fish scores the goal, it doesn't touch campus.
It's not going west of Mancini's.
No, and it can't go on the other side of the river either. No chance. No chance it's touching that.
No, that would not be good. We'll put it that way. So gentlemen, here we are, right? So the Gophers did what they had to do throughout the regular season. They get themselves as the 7th overall seed, if I recall. The final pairwise rankings again, headed out to their first round matchup with Omaha. Again, that taking place down in Sioux Falls. That is going to be at 8:30 p.m. Eastern puck drop, if I see this correctly. That is going to be on March 28th, which I believe is a Thursday. Yes, it is. So all eyes will be on that. The other semifinal will be at 5 o'clock Eastern, I believe. Just the matchup before. So then the Gophers would ideally get through them and then more than likely play BU. So, gentlemen, are we making a trip to the Frozen Four this year? Again, it's right in our own backyard. Going to the XL Energy Center. Who knows? The next time they'll get it, because there's apparently more venues interested in hosting the Frozen Four. So, do you got any plans to head over to the X?
Boy, it's going to be tough for the Gophers to make it this year. I think last year, obviously, we beyond the scaries that came from Canisius early on, I think the Gophers obviously took care of business the way they should have. I think this year it's BU's region to lose, of course, being one of the number 1 seeds, being I think the number 2 overall in the country. So this is going to be very difficult for the Gophers to get out of this. But I do think they have the talent, they have the depth, like we've been saying all year. I think they just have to get all the right things have to line up really well for the Gophers to beat BU and to shut down all of what they would have going forward. And that is to say they get past Omaha, who could really, I think, surprise them. I do think the Gophers win that game, but I think Omaha has a lot of tricks that could really wear down the Gophers over time. And if they get a couple clutch goals and Minnesota can't take on the offensive side and pot a few and have those game breakers pull through, could obviously be looking at a pretty early exit. But I think they can make the Frozen Four if they have a chance to win it. Obviously they'll find a way to beat BU, but I don't know. This is obviously a much different team from a game breaker perspective from last year.
And Nate will give you the last word here. You're out east. From what I understand, you're heading back to the Midwest to be in St. Paul to watch whoever is going to be the 4 teams that are left to vie for the College Hockey National Championship. When do you come on in, and what sort of the plans while you're here?
I'm excited. I'm going to have to head up, get myself a Juicy Lucy. I think I'm going to have to go up to Al's at some point. Enjoy 3 great games of hockey, just be surrounded by my college hockey family, my real family too, see them, and just enjoy being back home. So I'm excited to be out in Minnesota in a couple weeks for the Frozen Four. As far as whether the Gophers will make the trip with us, it's tough. There are no easy games this time of year. No team gets to play 240 minutes where they aren't struggling at some point. You're facing the best of the best. And with Minnesota, all 3 teams in this region can find ways to win and find ways to beat Minnesota and shut them down, whether it's using their grit, whether it's using their skill and speed, whether it's having top goalies. And that makes it really tough to pick Minnesota to get through this region. However, I do think that the Gophers, and they're very well-rounded. You have the skill, you have your Jimmy Snuggerud, you have your Rhett Pitlick, who can dazzle and score goals like anyone's business. You have the depth. You have your 3 lines of scoring like that. No one would be surprised. You have Jackson Nelson, who's been on fire lately this year. Bryce Brodzinski showed up late in the playoffs in the past. You have a tested goaltender, Justin Close, and a defense that it continues to get better with each passing game. So Minnesota has a lot of paths to victory, and that's all you can really ask for this time of year, especially as you face teams with different styles who you've not seen before, and you have to figure out, I feel, which ways things are going. The biggest thing that does kind of scare me if they do get through Omaha and face BU is not having the last change and having to not being the ones who can make those adjustments. But I do think, though, if the Gophers can get through both these 2 games and be in there in St. Paul with all of us, that they'll be in a very good position. You'll have that confidence. They'll have that swagger going. And they've shown that they are one of the best 4 teams in the nation. And that we have been talking since October about how this is a team built for the stretch run and has the experience and has that kind of that well-rounded play that you hope that will get you back to the Frozen Four, back to the championship game for that unfinished business for some of those players who have come back. And I think for me, I can see Minnesota doing it. I also do think it's not an easy task, nor would it be for anyone to do it. But, if the Gophers are there with us, I'll be a very happy person.
Well, to see how it goes, right? That's the beauty of the NCAA tournament is anything that can happen will likely happen and will at least trigger a couple of fan bases, guys, along the way. But hopefully the Gophers, again, taken from their road last season, can take some of that knowledge and take some of that experience and apply it here, again, with some different pieces. But again, it's traveling the road a second time. Sometimes it's a little bit more familiar with it. Oftentimes, it's just some of the emotions you can handle a little bit better. So hoping the Gophers can meet us in St. Paul.